Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Sorry for the delay, we had some technical issues. Welcome back to the webinar series on the occasion of PlayStreet's 10-year anniversary. As our regular attendees may know, this is our 8th webinar in the series. For those who are joining us for the first time today, please feel free to check out our previous webinars on our YouTube channel. My name is Anju. I'm the clinical social worker and special educator at PlayStreet. As you all may know, PlayStreet is an organization that provides educational services to help the child with special needs become independent and live up to their potential. We offer parent empowerment programs, integrated schooling programs, and a variety of clinical services. This year marks the 10th running year of PlayStreet, so we decided to bring you a series of 10 webinars, which will talk about small things to do at home to see many big changes. Today's expert is Pranjli Gupta, who will be talking about how play facilitates learning. Pranjli is a psychologist and a special educator who began working with children on the spectrum during her master's. She believes that children learn best when they are allowed to be themselves. She employs play and art to nourish the creativity and imagination that every child possesses. I will now hand it over to Pranjali. If you have any questions, kindly use the chat box. We'll have a small Q&A at the end of the webinar so we can maintain the flow of the event.
Thank you, Anju. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. Sorry for the delay. We had some technical difficulties. So today we're going to be talking about play and how play can help with growth and development of our kids and how we can help our children with play, like how how our children have difficulties with play and how children learn through play. So my first question to everyone here is, what is the occupation of our children? Play, yes. Our children's primary occupation is play. Very easy. Play is the primary occupation of our children, and it is a right of all children. So play in its truest form can give our children a sense of freedom. It gives our children chance to make choices, and it gives them the opportunity to express their creativity and their curiosity. It is a way for them to familiarize themselves with the world while exploring their limits and testing their own limits and exploring the world around them. They learn about themselves and about the world around them. They learn to socialize with others, and they learn practical skills and important life skills through play. Play helps them learn all of these things just by simple games that they play in everyday life. They also learn language and pre-academic skills before they even get to school. They learn so many things. A child who has people around them and a lot of toys will learn pre-academic skills such as numbers and just being before we even get to numbers. There are so many other skills like social components and gross and fine motor skills, and they just learn to explore. So a question that is probably on everyone's mind, does play even help with growth and development? Yes, it definitely does. What are the areas developmental areas in which play helps? So play helps in the cognitive development as well as the physical development. When a child goes out to play with his peers, it stimulates their early brain development. For example, a child who is engaging in physical activities and a lot of sensory play will have a lot of stimulation. For example, just when the baby is learning tracking, for example, you can just use bubbles to stimulate them, stimulate early tracking, and it really helps with early brain development. And lots of people around them, we always tell parents to help lots of play in early childhood, because lots of stimulation acts as building blocks for a child's development and also keeps them mentally and physically fit. Next is intelligence. Play will always help in developing intelligence, because when children go through life, they come across a lot of different situations which they may not be ready for in life, but through play they come across different life situations, and they learn how to act and how to behave in those situations through play. And they learn cognitive and like how to use language in these play situations, and they get to explore and gain worldly experience. It Play is probably the best way to spark creative thinking. Perhaps the most obvious benefit of play is to increase the child's creativity, and it is very closely related to divergent thinking, which is the thought process that explores many possible solutions and generates new ideas. Basically, out of the box thinking. Your child will be able to think of new ideas and come up with new games, and play really helps with that. And next is play improves communication, because communication and vocabulary and language, they need a child to practice, and practice comes with play will help a child learn language and communication way faster than in a classroom, because they will be very much motivated to do that. And then comes self-regulation. Since lots of situations come up on the playground, they learn to navigate a number of life situations through the playground, and they learn how they're supposed to compose themselves. Lastly, they also grow social competence and they learn empathy. When a child is put in different social situations, they learn to read social cues and what is expected of them. And they learn these concepts very well through practice. So, coming back to what are the different types of play? So, broadly, we talk about structured and unstructured play. Think of play as a prescription from a doctor. It's something our children need every day, and there should be a balance of structured and unstructured. So, structured play requires a child to follow a certain set of rules, certain set of guidelines, and by an adult. It will be a guided form of play, and such as board games or puzzles, or maybe a group where they have to follow a turn taking. Maybe they have to, maybe some team sports like soccer or dance or art. So structured will have certain rules, whereas unstructured play allows for children to do whatever interests them without as many directions or guides. Playing on the jungle gym, playing dress up, playing any kind of outdoor games, playing possibilities are endless basically. Unstructured will let them explore themselves. Unstructured allows for less direction, and they can do anything they want. Maybe they're just playing with sand, maybe they're just playing with the blocks. So there needs to be a balance of both. And so there are different stages of play as well. I'll just briefly go through them, because these people are very these are the we should know stages of play. So when a child is young, we have unoccupied play, where the child is not really playing, but they are just interested and they are observing someone else playing, because they are very curious that what is happening, what is this person doing. So maybe they're just standing in one spot and performing maybe random movements, but they're not really interacting for themselves per se. Then comes solitary or independent play, when the child is playing by themselves. This is something we see more in kids who are on the spectrum, since they have difficulties with social interaction. We do see this a lot in kids on the spectrum, solitary or independent play. We will talk more about this in the coming slides. And this is more common in younger children as well, as opposed to older children. Then there is onlooker play, where the child watches others at play but does not engage in it. And they have social interactions such as conversations about play without actually joining in. Then we have parallel play, where they might be playing together, but they don't play cooperative. They're not playing cooperatively. Like, I'll play with my toys, you play with your toys, but we're not gonna play together. This is kind of a transitory stage from socially immature solitary play and onlooker type of play to associative type of play, to cooperative type of play. So we try to encourage parallel play in our children so that they become comfortable with sharing their toys, they become comfortable with having another person in their space, they become comfortable with just having another person in their play space. Then there is associative play. The child will be interested in people playing, but not in coordinating their activities with those people. Or the substantial amount of interaction will be there, but the activities will not be in sync. So this is on the way to cooperative play, which is our end goal usually. That cooperative play is something most parents want from our children, that our child plays with us and is interested, the child is interested both in the person and in the activity. So the activity, the child will be taking an active role in the activity assigned, and there will be increased self-identification within the group. For example, dramatic play activities, for example, freeze game, for example, the balloon game, uh, catch and throw, any kind of games. Next, we're going to talk about this theory of playfulness given by Bundy, which talks about certain factors needed for play, which is very close to something we do here with principles of RDI that we have spoken about before. And he gave us a model of playfulness. Playfulness can be determined by the presence of these 5 characteristics. So, what is intrinsic motivation? Intrinsic motivation basically means that the child is doing the activity not for some external reward, but for some aspect of the identity, for some aspect of the activity itself. Maybe for the fun of it, maybe because this activity is fun, maybe because he likes the toy, maybe because he likes the person that is conducting the activity, maybe he finds the toy interesting, maybe what you're doing with the toy is something he finds interesting, and not because he will find a reward at the end of the activity. So that is basically intrinsic motivation, and this is one of the very basic principles of RDI. If you have attended the step-up program that we have, or if you remember the guided participation webinar, intrinsic motivation is a very basic principles of RDI, and this is something we really work on here. Next is internal control, and the individual will be in charge of his or her own actions. And this is again something we're going to talk about in detail. For example, I do not have to force the child to interact with me. The child will be willing to come and interact with me. Next is freedom to suspend reality. This basically means that the individual chooses how close to objective reality the play will be. For example, pretend play, playing house, playing doctor, and they're choosing that, okay, for this while we are in this particular world, we play in the world of imagination. Next characteristic would be framing of the activity. Now you are going to do this, I'm going to do this, taking and giving turns. So they are framing this activity. And last characteristic last characteristic is to be able to read verbal and non-verbal cues when interacting. To be able to be playful, these are the 5 elements that Bundy recognized. Now, how can we as caretakers guide play? For this, we need to go back and remember the webinar on guided relationships conducted by Harsh. So we previously learned about guided relationships, and we're going to take a few principles from there and apply them here. So start small, plan ahead, simplify the activity and game, make it very simple to follow. Recognize the personal obstacles that your child might face. Remove all of the personal obstacles that your child might face in the activity. If there are any noises, there any light, any objects in the room that might distract your child, just remove everything from the child's environment that might hinder their attention in the during the activity. Model everything for your child. So the best way our children learn is through modeling. uh, do flashcards not so much, but if you model it for your children, they will learn it very good, very well. And of course, slow down to do more. Once you slow down everything that you are doing, our children will pick up way faster. Going into how we can guide play. So we at PlayStreet have our own model of guided play called Airy. And first step in that is anticipation. Anticipation is where we create the willingness and intent to move. I'll talk about this in detail. So I'm going to go through the steps one by one, and I'm going to show you some videos. And this is a model we use here at PlayStreet. And we use a lot of creative games for the kids. And you're going to see a lot of videos. And I'm going to go ahead and talk about the steps in brief. And then we're going to go through them one by one. Then we establish roles and patterns and creating reciprocity. Next comes imitation, where we work on motor planning and concept imitation. Then there is ideation, where the child does regulatory repair and stays in sync with the therapist. And finally comes initiation, where the child takes responsibility and ownership for communicating his needs and wants and takes responsibility for the activity. So anticipation. Now, how do we create this anticipation? Where does this come from? If there is anyone here who has attended Minimam's Step Up program, do you remember the very first step of co-regulation? Establishing attunement. Attunement is the willingness a child has to interact with the therapist. To establish attunement, we start with an activity that will be fun. Tickling, yeah, great. Very good example. Peekaboo, yeah, bubble play. Very good examples. So these activities have to be really fun. Playing with foam, yeah, great examples. So these activities should not feel like work to the child, and they have to give the child a reason to engage with the therapist. They give the child a reason to communicate with the therapist and make the child feel safe with the therapist. As one or two sessions go by, the child feels safe and forms a meaningful bond with the therapist. When the child feels safe, they form an emotional engagement. And as they feel safe, they will start trusting the therapist, and they will engage in activities, and they will stay in the moment and have joint attention and engage in joint tasks. So as the child forms an emotional engagement with the therapist, they will feel safe and they will have a reason to engage with the therapist, and they will have an intention to move their body, and they will willingly establish joint attention and engage in the activities. Okay, let's see an example, and I'll just play this video and see how. Inside, inside. Oh, that was inside. 1, 2, 3. One more time. inside, inside, all the balls, inside, 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 all the balls, inside, 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 all the balls, and then 1, 2, 3, outside. Good job. So you see how the child was waiting and he was attending to the activity and he was waiting patiently and he was putting the balls. So there was joint attention. He was not looking here and there. He was not in his own world. He was paying attention to the task. So this is called joint attention, where the child is engaged in the task at hand, and there was intent to move as he was putting the balls inside, and he was waiting to see what is happening, and he was patiently waiting for the shower of balls. And so that's basically when there is intent to move, that's where you have anticipation. When there is joint engagement, you have anticipation. Some other examples are running and crashing into a beanbag or a bed or a soft surface, or like we had an example, tickle monster. Next comes reciprocity. How do we work on reciprocity? Here we work on establishing each person's roles and pattern of the activity. So the pattern should be easy enough to follow, so that if it's very complex, our child's mental processing resources will just be focused on figuring out what does my parent, what does the therapist want me to do. So if they're just trying to figure that out, they will not be able to focus on the task at hand. So the pattern should be very easy to follow, and the role that you want them to have should also be easy to understand. So we keep the role and pattern very easy to follow. And in reciprocity, we establish each other's roles and pattern. For example, catching and throwing a ball. So you have to catch a ball and then throw it. Catch and throw it. It's easy to follow and it's fun. We always remember to use lots of gestures and expressions as cues. Because again, when you use a lot of language, your child's processing resources are going into understanding your language. Oh, my parents said this. I have to figure out what they said, decode that, understand that, and then execute it. But if you use gestures and expressions, that is much easier to decode because they're right in front of them. So always try to use more of gestures and expressions than language. Then comes referencing and coordination. So what is referencing? That is basically how when the child looks at you and is able to read your social cues and gestures, that is referencing. And then they will be able to coordinate their own actions according to that. Because, okay, you moved to the left and they need to move to the right. So that's how they will be able to coordinate their actions, because they are looking at you and they're able to reference to that and coordinate their own actions if they are in sync with you. And then comes just noticeable differences. So again, for example, push and pull, and adding just noticeable differences. As they pick up the pattern, the therapist can extend the pattern by adding a just noticeable difference. So for example, in push and pull, you add maybe push, pull, and another pull. So you're extending the pattern by adding a very small perceivable difference. And your child will be able to recognize that difference and make an adjustment so that they stay in the pattern and they stay in sync and follow the pattern as well. So they make adjustments accordingly. And without getting out of sync, without getting dysregulated, they And then the therapist add another difference, add another just noticeable difference, and then another, and then another. And then they keep going, extending the pattern. And that's how you keep adding and adding and adding. For example, catch and throw a ball. Maybe you could add a just noticeable difference by bouncing it on the floor in the middle. So that's how you keep adding and extending the pattern. So let's watch this video of just a role and pattern establishment, different games you can play for referencing and coordination. And let's just watch this video of different games you can play
Read
with
books
your child.
together. Point to pictures as you find them, or ask your child to locate something on the page. Blow bubbles with your child and share delight by popping the bubbles together. Sing songs together that have actions, such as row, row, row your boat. For this activity to work, your child has to be engaging with you at the same time, and usually results in giggles of enjoyment. Don't forget to scream. Good one! Play interactive, noisy board games such as Hungry Hippos together. This is a fun way to engage in an activity and to watch what the other people are doing at the same time. Build a block tower with your child. Take it in turns to place a block on the tower. Cooperative play using turn taking is a great way to develop joint attention. Whoa, should we crash it down or do more? Okay, crash! Whoa, good crash! Well done. Play interactive people games such as the Tickle Monster. Create anticipation, but don't then tickle your child until they look at you. Play musical instruments together. See who can make their instrument make the loudest noise. Play peekaboo with your child. Use different objects such as a scarf or your hands to cover your face. Allow your child to pull the object away and then say boo. And you find it. Peekaboo! Oh, boo! Have fun playing with Play-Doh. Ask your child to share the cookie cutters or rolling pin with you. Elliot, can I have the rolling pin, please? Oh, thank you. Good sharing. Roll, roll. Hide objects in a colourful bag. Create anticipation by shaking the bag and asking your child what's hiding in the bag. Get the child to then pull something out of the bag and name it as they do so. I wonder what's hiding. What have you got? A plate.
Those were some examples of activities that you can do at home. And yeah, next we come to imitation, the next step. And so this is an easy one, as most of you would know what imitation is. A child simply tries to copy your actions of another person. But did you know there are two types of imitation? The first is very simple motor imitation. The child follows the gross and fine motor movement required of them in an activity. So this could be simple, very simply the actions required to follow in a rhyme, or any activity that they need to just follow your physical actions. So when do they have difficulties in imitation? When they have difficulties in imitation, when they have motor planning difficulties, or when they just cannot follow your commands. And then then we have concept imitation. What is concept imitation? Concept imitation is where the child understands the core concept and is able to follow the therapist as independently as possible. For example, pretend play. Now, in pretend play, children pick up a lot of skills trying to imitate their parents, teachers, and even their friends. For example, trying to play kitchen, trying to play doctor, like trying to pick up different professions and trying giving each other roles and playing house with each other. So they're getting the core concept and they're trying to imitate each other, and they're trying to figure out how the world works. So let's see an example of pretend play. Yeah, I think the sound is not coming. So the rhythmic chant here is wipe, wipe, dry the head, dry the belly. So he's imitating the therapist and he's doing those actions with the therapist. Yeah, he's wiping and he's drying the baby with the therapist because now she's drying the head. So he's also drying the head and the belly. Yeah, that is basically pretend play and how children pick up so many skills from because they're trying to model us because they want to be like us. And they learn so many things through that. Next comes ideation. This is the stage where the child will be able to stay in sync with the therapist. And here they even make regulatory repairs. Now, what are regulatory repairs? Regulatory repairs are where the child is trying to stay in sync with you. He's trying to stay in the moment. And when he makes a mistake, he recognizes the mistake, he's able to go back, correct it, and then go on. So that's called regulatory repair. And at this stage, the child will also be able to build upon the existing pattern of the game and extend it also. So at this point, you can also try reversing your roles. A fun game to play would be Simon Says, or maybe the balloon game. And at this point, you will also find a peak in their curiosity. They will want to play new and newer games. They will make up their own games maybe, and you will find a willingness in them to explore. And let's watch a small video again to see an example of staying in sync and how the child stays in sync with them and how they have established a small rapport.
For the next game, I want to show you one that's called Balloon Balance and then Bubble Balance. They're kind of the same game in a way. They work a little bit differently, but the first one we're just going to take a balloon and just going to play that game where you keep the balloon from hitting the ground. So come on in and we'll try this one.
This
so maybe right about there, back up just a step. Perfect. Don't let it hit the ground. And every time he's hitting it, it's like you're reminding your brain, hey, I live in a body and I gotta take care of this body that I'm in, even though right now maybe my body's pretty upset. There you go. I missed that one. And right now we're standing close together, but you could be quite far apart, or they might do this themselves. And there's one other version of it, and that is to use bubbles. So the way that you do the bubbles is you can't hit a bubble without it popping. So what we'll do is we'll blow bubbles, and then he's going to have to use his breath to keep it in the air, and I can do the same thing. So we'll try that one also. So let me just grab my bubbles. And I'm going to blow these. I'm going to angle kind of up so that they have some time to fall, and that'll give him time to kind of get ready for them. There's just a couple on that one. So you try to see if you can get them up into the air and keep them in the air, maybe even up to the ceiling. Looks like you sniped that one. Okay, I'm going to get a couple more here. That's a few right there. Let's see if I can get a nice big one. Here's one coming at you. Okay, here comes a big one. I think I ate half of that bubble. And so when we're doing this, we're just using our breath to keep that bubble in the air, and it's regulating. It's like deep breathing.
So that was an example of regulatory responsibilities, keeping in sync. Then our final stage is initiation. This is where we want our children to be. And I would like our parents to understand this is the very final stage of play. A lot of work to get here. And this is where our children are finally strongly motivated to communicate and take responsibility for initiating a game of their own choice. They will take ownership and as well as have their own rules and frame the activity themselves. And they will take responsibility for coordinating their own game. They will tell you, do this, and then I will do this, and then you do this. So basically, they take the ownership for the game that they want to play. And they want the activity to be played for mutual enjoyment. They want you to play with them. And this is our final stage where we want our children to be. And this is the end goal for all therapists and parents. And finally, I have some 10 tips, do's and don'ts. So first of all, play with your child in a lot of different ways. Don't stick to one way. Try different things and let your child direct their play. Let your child direct to some extent, but do not over-direct. Do not let them over-direct as well. And do not over-direct the play yourself, because there has to be a moderation. And ask your child questions. So when I say ask your child questions, I do not mean ask your child, oh, what is this? What is that? What is this? What is that? No, ask your child questions like, hey, what would you like to do next? What would you like to do after this? What is this thing that, what interests you now? Like, ask your child questions in the sense that would encourage them to, that makes them feel like they are being heard. And encourage playing with others. Encourage them to play with other people. And get outside, get off your phone. Don't let the screen distract you. Don't be in the moment with them. And let your child pick the activities. Don't force what you want to do on them. Let your child pick the activity that they want to do. And there will be times where they just want to do the same activity again and again, but you can bring in your own activities. But if they just don't want to do it, don't force the activities on your kid. And most importantly, be silly. Be as silly as you can, because that's what they need. Our children need silly time. So be as silly as you can be. And now we can open for questions.
So the floor is now open for any questions. You can either unmute or put it in the chat box.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Janvi and I have a question. This school is till for what age of kids? Till what age it would support?
Our school, we have kids of all ages, as young as 2 to 3 years old, and our oldest is 16-year-old.
If you go to our YouTube channel, the very first pinned video tells you about all of our programs.
Sometimes they will not show interest in playing. So how can we increase their interest?
So I think the first thing I talked about was anticipation. We start with anticipation. We use activities that will be really fun for the child. We work on attunement first thing. If you have a good relationship with the child, you work on attunement, and we start there. You use activities that are really fun for the child. The activities that the child really likes to do, and you go from there. And for example, just bubbles or tickling or trains at or what are some activities your child likes to do? Just do any of those, and then you to slowly start introducing other activities.
As Pranjli, yeah, sorry, I'm also pitching in the answer.
Yeah.
As Pranjli told you about the structure of the play in a very structured way, she explained, right? Anticipation, then reciprocity, then imitation, ideation, and in the end, initiation. So you start playing with your child with fun things without putting any demands on them. That's more important. Most important thing is you don't put demands that you have to do it back. The moment there's a pressure that they have to do it back, and if they can't do it, they start resisting or they start escaping. What? As the reason, the very first step is creating anticipation. You do fun things and they see something fun happening, and then they come back to you to want that more and more and more. So like as she gave you the example of showering the balls on the child, or bubbles, or say playing whistles, or running the train sets, or those your cars, the pull and push cars. So they see something happening, the cause and effect, and then they come back to you because they want it more. And that's how the beginning happens. So very first step is to reduce demands and create anticipation. That is the beginning of the model. And that's how the interest starts, and it takes a while for interest to go to the next level. So you have to do it for weeks. It will not get finished in just one day or 1 month or one hour. You have to build this connect with your child for weeks together, for child to be ready to go to next stage. Every stage mentioned here takes enormous time, around months.
Okay. I work on every stage for at least a month, and then I see if I can go to the next stage.
Yes.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Welcome.
Ma'am, is there any age-wise, 1 to 2 years we have to give this play, 3 to 4 years we have to give this place? Like this data is available? Which play we have to introduce?
So our children go through stages of play as they're growing. Like I talked about unoccupied play and then solitary play. Our children normally go through those stages as they're growing up. And because those are the stages of development for them. So play also has those stages. For example, I'll just share that part of the PPT again. Unoccupied play is the very first stage, then solitary, onlooker. So as your child grows, they go through these stages. Parallel play comes in when they are maybe 5 to 6 years old. Then as they go into adolescence, you will find more of associative play and cooperative play.
Okay.
So for anybody interested here, Shireen is starting a workshop on Hand and More Than Words program from 12th of January for 12 weeks. A very, very informative workshop on how to develop communication using play. So for the very end, it's for children with autism till 5 to 6 years of age. So how the play stages are developed. So solitary play, after solitary play, we go into sensory play, destructive play. So before we start constructing, we actually destruct. Shireen is going to take you in that journey. So I really, really recommend that if you have young children below 6 years or around 6 years, you should attend that workshop. It's a 12-week workshop online, because play is the foundation of communication. Communication is the foundation of language. Language is the foundation and motivation for speech. It's a step-by-step work, and you shouldn't miss it.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Please do join us next week for our next webinar. It's going to be on learning through rhythm and movement by Juanita. The recording of this webinar will be uploaded on our YouTube channel. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for joining.